It started with a joke. Just one smug comment from Elon Musk about Michael B. Jordan's acting chops, and the crowd laughed like it was all harmless. But behind Michael's calm smile was something burning. Not rage, but a memory. A promise he once made. And when he clapped back, it wasn't with words, it was with something no one saw coming. What do you do when the richest man in the world gets humbled by truth itself? It was supposed to be a night of innovation and unity, a global summit where tech titans and entertainment powerhouses shared ideas, stories, and a stage. The event, dubbed Future Fame, was live-streamed to millions. Elon Musk, as always, was the closing act, charming, unpredictable, and armed with his usual dose of dry wit. Seated beside him was none other than Michael B. Jordan, invited to speak about the merging of storytelling and virtual technology. The chemistry seemed fine until Elon leaned into the microphone with that sly grin and said, "Acting's easy when you only have two expressions." The audience erupted in laughter. Cameras panned to Michael's face. He chuckled politely, but his eyes didn't smile. Social media wasted no time. The moment went viral in seconds. Musk roasts Creed star trended worldwide. Memes flooded Twitter and Instagram, side-by-side photos of Michael's stoic film roles with captions like Expression 1 and Expression 2. Podcasts picked it up. Talk shows ran clips. Commentators debated whether Elon was just joking or subtly putting Michael down in front of the world. And through it all, Michael said nothing. Behind the scenes, his team urged him to respond. "Clap back," one publicist said. "Make a meme of your own," another suggested. But Michael remained silent. Not because he was afraid, but because he knew something the world didn't. This wasn't the first time someone had tried to make him small in public. Growing up in Newark, he'd heard worse, much worse. He remembered a drama teacher in middle school who once told him, "You're not the type to make it in film." He remembered auditions where he was told he wasn't versatile enough. And he remembered the vow he made to himself, never give them the reaction they want. Always hit back smarter. But this time, the jab wasn't just about him. Something about Elon's words, about how the audience laughed so quickly, triggered something deeper. He looked out at that crowd, tech giants, influencers, creators, and saw how easily they dismissed someone's entire career with a single sarcastic line. It reminded him of something worse than an insult. It reminded him of erasure. That night, while the internet laughed, Michael sat alone in his hotel suite. He re-watched the clip. Once. Twice. Then he opened a folder on his laptop. It was something he'd started drafting a year ago, a project he had shelved. At the time, it felt too risky. Too personal. But now, it felt right. He stared at the screen for a long moment, then smiled. Not because of the joke, but because of the opportunity hidden in it. Elon had just handed him the stage. What he did with it would shake the world. He picked up his phone and called his team. "Get everyone together," he said. "We're going to finish that docuseries." Back at his home in Los Angeles, far from the flashing cameras and trending hashtags, Michael sat in his dimly lit office, surrounded by framed memories. Photos of his mother, still holding that same proud smile from his Fruitvale Station premiere. A signed script from Black Panther. An old hoodie from the set of The Wire. They weren't just trophies, they were reminders of the journey. And right now, they were anchors. Because despite his calm public face, inside he was spinning. The sting of Elon's comment wasn't about ego. It was about how easily the world laughed when someone with money mocked someone who built their life from nothing. Michael didn't grow up with billions or with the world watching his every move. He grew up in Newark, New Jersey, in a neighborhood that was more grit than glamour. His mother worked long shifts, and his father taught him to fight fair but never let anyone define him. Acting didn't come easy. He was a background character long before he became a name. He played bit roles, auditioned until his voice cracked, and often left casting rooms feeling invisible. Even when he landed lead roles, there were critics who said he didn't have range. That word followed him everywhere. He started to wonder if it was just code for something else, something unspoken. But every time someone doubted him, Michael turned that doubt into fuel. When people mocked his first directorial effort, he studied twice as hard. When agents pushed him toward easy roles, he fought for complex ones. And now, as the world chuckled over Elon's smug joke, Michael didn't feel hurt. He felt determined. Because there was a deeper story people weren't seeing. Elon's joke was just the tip of a much bigger problem. A problem where the powerful controlled the narrative and turned people into punchlines. Michael knew how dangerous that could be. Late into the night, he rewatched a short video his team had once filmed but never released. It was raw. A man crying in his car after being laid off from a Tesla subcontractor job. The man said his name was Terrence. He used to work in a plant that Elon's AI systems had made redundant. He talked about feeding his kids on instant noodles and how it felt to go from building something to being discarded like a broken part. Michael remembered that interview well. It haunted him. It also inspired him. This was the heart of the story he had wanted to tell before he got distracted by other projects. Now, the fire was back. For the next few days, Michael stayed quiet in public, but behind the scenes, he worked like a man possessed. His team thought he was planning a short response video. Maybe a monologue. Maybe even a slick, well-produced Instagram post. But Michael wanted something bigger. Something lasting. He went back to that folder on his laptop, labeled The Forgotten Voices. Inside were hours of footage from across the country. Interviews with displaced workers, former engineers, warehouse staff, and teachers who lost funding due to tech-driven budget cuts. These were the people whose lives had been upended by the very systems that Elon was praised for creating. He spent long hours editing, scripting, and researching. He met again with old friends from the industry, cinematographers, editors, and grassroots activists. Not to stir up drama, but to shine a light. Every image, every soundbite, every story was chosen with care. Michael wasn't interested in revenge. He was interested in truth. He didn't need to shout to be heard. He knew silence could be louder than noise, if it carried a story people could feel. Outside his home, paparazzi waited. Headlines speculated. Will Jordan retaliate? Hollywood versus Silicon Valley. He ignored it all. Not because he didn't care, but because he knew real change never came from soundbites. It came from depth. And if Elon thought Michael was just an actor with two expressions, then he was about to learn what expression looked like when it told a truth no amount of money could erase. By the end of the week, Michael had a complete outline for a docuseries that didn't just push back, it reached forward. It was about more than him. It was about every person who ever felt small in a world built by giants. He sat back in his chair, exhausted but clear-minded. The silence he had held wasn't weakness. It was power waiting for the right moment to speak. And when it did, the world would listen. Michael didn't want another flashy celebrity campaign. He didn't want to drop a tweet and disappear into the noise. This wasn't about being viral. It was about being seen. About making people stop and ask questions they hadn't asked before. He knew Elon wouldn't expect something quiet, thoughtful, or carefully built. Elon thrived on chaos, speed, and shock. But Michael was playing a different game. He didn't need to win headlines. He needed to win hearts. And that required something Elon had never shown much patience for: time. He called a meeting with his core team, just 6 people. People he trusted. His editor, a soft-spoken genius who had worked with him since his early indie films. A writer who once spent years living out of her car while trying to get her first screenplay made. A producer who had grown up in Flint, Michigan, and never forgot the way her hometown was ignored. Each of them brought stories of their own. And Michael knew that was the point. The docuseries wasn't just going to be about tech versus people. It was going to be about who gets to write the story of progress, and who gets erased from it. The plan took shape slowly. Michael wanted the first episode to hit like a freight train. Not angry. Not bitter. Just real. It would open with the laughter from the Future Fame Summit, Elon's joke, the crowd's reaction, the freeze frame on Michael's face. Then it would cut to black. And after a beat, the sound of a man crying. Terrence. His voice shaking as he talked about missing his daughter's birthday because he had to sell his car to pay rent. The episode would jump between clips of flashy Tesla ads and raw footage of communities where factories had closed, schools had lost funding, and people had lost their place in the world. Michael wanted the contrast to sting. Not because he wanted to humiliate Elon, but because the truth needed to be uncomfortable. But that was just the start. The series would then widen its scope, showing stories from Detroit, from Mississippi, from small towns in Ohio where jobs had vanished after automation took over. There would be no yelling. No grand speeches. Just stories. Human stories. Stories that couldn't be laughed away. Michael planned to narrate each episode, not with flair, but with honesty. His voice wouldn't be that of a star, it would be that of a witness. And slowly, episode by episode, he would show the gap between the promise of progress and the people left behind by it. They named the series The Shadows of Innovation. Every part of it was crafted to feel personal. Not polished. Not corporate. They used real footage, handheld shots, moments where people broke down on camera and asked the kinds of questions nobody at the top ever answers. And Michael knew that once it dropped, it would make noise. Not because of him, but because of them. Because of the people in it. The ones who had been invisible for too long. He also knew Elon would see it as an attack. He prepared for that. Lawyers reviewed every line. Every quote. Every fact. They made sure nothing could be dismissed as slander or spin. It wasn't a hit piece. It was a mirror. And Elon could choose to look into it or not, but the rest of the world would. The final touch was the release strategy. No trailers. No hype. Just a quiet launch, dropped on every platform at once. YouTube, Hulu, Netflix, Amazon. A full partnership with streamers who had once begged Michael for exclusives. This time, he told them all the same thing: everyone gets it, or no one does. He wasn't playing favorites. He was lighting a fuse. 2 weeks before the release, the world still thought Michael was planning a simple response. Maybe a late-night talk show appearance or an Instagram monologue. Elon, when asked in a podcast if he thought Michael was upset, laughed and said, "He's probably busy practicing his serious face." That was the last time he'd laugh about it. On the eve of the launch, Michael posted a single sentence on his social media: "The story isn't about me. It's about what you didn't see." No photo. No video. Just words. And within an hour, it had been shared more than 50,000 times. The next morning, The Shadows of Innovation dropped in full. No warning. No build-up. Just truth. Elon would wake up to a world watching, and not the way he was used to. The morning the docuseries dropped, the internet was eerily quiet at first. No flashy headlines. No breaking news banners. Just a few people on social media posting confused comments like, "Wait, did Michael B. Jordan just release a whole documentary?" Then the algorithm caught it. A clip from the first episode started spreading. Terrence, the laid-off worker, crying in his car. His raw, broken voice hit different. This wasn't acting. This wasn't scripted. It was real. It was painful. And it was everywhere within hours. People started binge-watching the whole series in one sitting. They weren't just watching, they were feeling it. By midday, the name of the series, The Shadows of Innovation, was trending worldwide. And Elon Musk. He hadn't said a word. Inside SpaceX, Tesla, and Twitter, the mood shifted. Executives scrambled. PR teams started drafting responses. But no one knew how to handle it. The series wasn't an attack. It didn't mention Elon directly more than a few times. It never cursed him, mocked him, or called him out by name. But that's what made it hit harder. The faces, the stories, the places, all of it drew a line straight back to the world Elon had built. And suddenly, the man who always controlled the narrative couldn't spin this one. The most damaging part wasn't just the human pain. It was the receipts. Michael had made sure every claim in the series was backed by proof. News clips, financial reports, audio from public shareholder meetings. One segment focused on a rural town in Indiana where a factory closed after automation was introduced. The local school shut down a year later. Suicide rates went up. Michael's team interviewed a former teacher who now worked part-time at a gas station. She said, "Progress left us behind. And we didn't even get a goodbye." That line alone made headlines across news networks. Michael didn't do interviews. He didn't post reactions. He disappeared. The only time his name showed up after the release was in a short tweet from his production company. "We told their stories. Now it's your turn to listen." And the world did. Celebrities shared the series. Politicians started quoting it in debates about automation. Union leaders cited it during contract talks. What began as a silent project turned into a cultural earthquake. And the epicenter was Elon's careless joke. Back in Silicon Valley, Elon's inner circle pushed him to respond. Some wanted him to issue a statement apologizing for the summit comment. Others told him to discredit the series as emotional manipulation. Elon did neither. At first, he laughed it off in private, calling it Hollywood guilt-bait. But inside, he was rattled. This wasn't a scandal he could shake with a meme. This was something deeper. People didn't just dislike what they saw, they started questioning what they had admired. And that kind of shift doesn't fade fast. Things got worse when media outlets began running segments titled "The Real Cost of Tech Glory" and "When Innovation Has a Human Price." One magazine published a cover story with side-by-side photos of Elon smiling at a Tesla launch and Terrence crying in his car. The caption read, "Two faces of the future." Elon's name was no longer just tied to rockets and cars, it was now linked to broken homes and vanishing jobs. Behind closed doors, he was furious. He ranted during meetings. He accused former partners of leaking information. But he couldn't touch Michael. Not legally. Not reputationally. Michael hadn't broken a single rule. He had simply told stories no one wanted to hear. Stories that had been true all along. Elon tried to shift the spotlight by announcing new tech projects, teasing space updates, even promising a new AI product. But the public wasn't listening the same way anymore. The trust had cracked. And the laughter he once commanded had turned into silence. Then came the second wave. Teachers, nurses, and warehouse workers across the country began sharing their own stories online using the hashtag #ShadowsOfInnovation. Some posted photos of closed schools and abandoned buildings. Others posted videos telling their own experiences of being replaced or ignored. The series had done more than reveal a problem. It had opened a door. And through that door came thousands of voices. For Elon, it felt like being boxed into a corner. He was used to being the disruptor, the hero of his own story. But now, for the first time, he was the backdrop to someone else's message. And the worst part, he couldn't find the villain in the room. Michael never raised his voice, never pointed a finger. He didn't have to. The world had already seen enough. The stage was no longer his. And as more people tuned in, Elon realized something chilling. This wasn't just a PR problem. It was a shift in how people saw him. The joke had turned into a mirror. And the reflection staring back wasn't funny anymore. Elon thought he had seen the worst of it. He believed the docuseries would fade, just like every other wave of online outrage. But what he didn't know was that the most painful blow hadn't even landed yet. It came quietly, without fanfare, buried halfway through episode 4 of The Shadows of Innovation. The story began like the others, with a man named David speaking softly about losing his job at a logistics hub in Nevada after a wave of automation rendered him useless. He talked about the long nights, the medical bills, the pressure of raising 2 kids alone. He mentioned he once had big dreams, wanted to work in aerospace. Then came the line that cracked everything open. "My cousin works for SpaceX," he said. "We haven't talked in years." At first, most viewers didn't think twice. It was another heartbreaking story. But then, a name flashed on screen, David Musk. Viewers paused, rewound, and squinted. It wasn't a mistake. The man in the series was Elon's cousin. Estranged, yes. But blood. The news spread like wildfire. Media outlets pounced on it. Headlines lit up with phrases like "Musk family secrets" and "Elon's hidden relative speaks out." Suddenly, the docuseries wasn't just about workers being left behind. It had become personal. David's story wasn't angry. It wasn't bitter. It was quiet, tired, and painfully honest. He said they grew up miles apart, Elon in South Africa, him in a trailer park in Arizona. Their families only met a handful of times. He remembered Elon as brilliant, strange, always talking about space and machines. But life took them in opposite directions. David said he wrote to Elon once, years ago, asking for help getting into an engineering school. He never heard back. He said he wasn't angry. He understood Elon had bigger things to focus on. But when he saw factories shutting down, people losing jobs to robots, and Elon making jokes on stage, he felt something break. "We build the roads he drives on," David said. "And we're not even in the rearview mirror." The quote hit like a hammer. Overnight, the story exploded. Elon's silence became louder. Reporters begged for comments. Talk shows dissected every frame of the episode. And Michael? He still hadn't said a word. He didn't need to. The twist had landed with more weight than any tweet ever could. It wasn't about tearing Elon down. It was about showing how even the most powerful man in tech couldn't escape the human cost of his empire. And that cost had a face, a voice, a bloodline. Inside Elon's companies, the panic was real. Some insiders leaked emails showing that leadership had no idea David even existed, let alone that he would appear in the series. Elon was blindsided. For someone who prided himself on control, on being 10 steps ahead, this was a nightmare. He called emergency meetings. He considered legal options. But again, there was nothing to attack. No lies. No slander. Just truth wrapped in stillness. And that made it impossible to fight. 4 days, Elon stayed off social media. When he finally returned, he posted a single message: "Families are complicated. I wish him well." The post was vague, careful, and didn't answer any of the questions people were asking. Why hadn't he helped his cousin? Had he really ignored that letter? Did he even know about it? The silence left room for speculation, and in the court of public opinion, that silence was enough. Meanwhile, Michael's series continued climbing in views. Educators began organizing screenings. Churches held community discussions based on the themes. Labor unions reached out to Michael's team asking to collaborate. The docuseries wasn't a media moment anymore. It was a movement. And the twist about David gave it a face that no one could forget. Elon, once the symbol of genius and progress, now seemed like a man trapped by his own detachment. For the first time, people began to ask not just how he built his empire, but what it had cost him along the way. And the final twist. Michael never promoted the episode. No interviews. No follow-ups. He let the story breathe. Let the audience decide what it meant. Because that was always the plan. This wasn't about shouting louder. It was about letting silence speak. The days that followed were unlike anything Elon had ever experienced. For a man who'd lived through stock market dips, product failures, and even lawsuits, this felt different. He had always been able to bounce back with a product launch, a clever tweet, or a well-timed appearance on a podcast. But this wasn't about tech. It wasn't about business. It was about people, perception, and trust. And this time, the damage couldn't be fixed with a new car or a rocket launch. For the first time, Elon wasn't being talked about as a visionary. He was being talked about as a man who had forgotten the human cost of his success. Under pressure from shareholders, Elon agreed to do a sit-down interview with a well-known journalist. The idea was to show a more reflective side. To control the bleeding. But even that backfired. When asked directly about David, Elon hesitated. He said he didn't remember the letter, but it was possible it had been filtered out by his team. He spoke in circles, trying to sound understanding without sounding guilty. But the damage was already done. His lack of direct emotion only confirmed what the public had started to believe. He was disconnected from the people he claimed to care about. The clip went viral. Not because of what he said, but because of what he didn't say. Meanwhile, Michael stayed silent. Not out of pride, but because there was nothing left to add. The docuseries had already spoken louder than anything he could say. He turned down dozens of interviews, offers from networks, even invitations to speak at major summits. He wasn't interested in riding the wave. He wanted it to move without him. Because this wasn't about revenge, it was about responsibility. He went back to filming, working on new projects, and helping the people featured in the series find legal and financial help. Quietly, without cameras. Online, the backlash against Elon grew into something deeper. It wasn't just about a joke anymore. It was about everything people had once admired him for. Articles were written titled "When Visionaries Forget Their Vision" and "Innovation Without a Heart." Companies that once bragged about partnering with his brands now stayed quiet. Celebrities who had once praised him stopped mentioning his name. For a man who had built an identity around being the center of attention, the silence was deafening. But not everyone turned against him. Some defended him, saying he had done more for progress than most people ever would. That automation and AI were the future, and someone had to lead. But even those voices were quieter now. Because the issue wasn't whether Elon had done great things. It was whether he had done them with care. Whether he had seen the people left behind in his rush to change the world. And now, that question hung over everything he did. In one unexpected twist, David was offered multiple job opportunities after the docuseries. Engineering firms, startups, even non-profits reached out. He accepted a modest job at a community college, helping students build affordable robotic tools. When asked why he turned down higher-paying offers, he said, "I just want to build something that helps, not replaces." His line was quoted across social media, painted on murals, and even used in campaigns calling for tech reform. In his quiet way, David had become a symbol of something bigger. A reminder that intelligence without empathy isn't progress, it's just noise. Michael eventually released a short video months later. It wasn't flashy. Just him, sitting in a chair, looking straight at the camera. He said he was proud of what his team had done. That telling the truth doesn't mean you hate the person you're exposing. It means you believe they can do better. He ended with a message that hit hard. We can build rockets and change the world, but if we forget to look back, we might just launch ourselves into a future we can't live in. The video was less than 2 minutes long, but it was shared millions of times. People called it the most powerful post of the year. And Elon? He didn't respond. Not publicly. Not this time. In the end, the story didn't end with a dramatic apology or a big showdown. It ended quietly, with the world a little more awake. With people asking harder questions. With voices that had once been ignored finally being heard. And with one man's silent clapback echoing louder than any words ever could.